Hey everyone, after recent discussion around the fact that a British Lucy left a review for staying at Pensión Playa, we wanted to explore just how likely it is that this Lucy was Lucy Mae Law, the same Lucy connected to the Slater case. The review was dated June 16th, and that timing matters. There's been ongoing speculation, especially regarding the blanket seen in the infamous Snapchat photo, the one many believe to be the last image of Slater before his disappearance and eventual tragic death. Some have suggested the blanket shown in that snap resembles one used at Pensión Playa. We'll touch on the blanket theory a little later, but first, we need to establish how strong the case is that it was Lucy Mae Law who left that review. Because when we look at the data, the numbers, the timing, the travel pattern, a very clear picture starts to emerge. This breakdown was previously shared in a community post, but since not everyone checks those, we've decided to present it here in full, walking through the logic step by step, with context, background, and clear reasoning. Guest turnover models. To begin, we looked at the number of people likely staying at Pensión Playa during the relevant week. The guest house is small, with only 15 rooms, and the number of unique guests depends entirely on the length of stay. We explored three different scenarios to capture the full range of possibilities. First, a long-stay model assumes guests stayed the full 7 nights, with 15 rooms and an average of 1.5 people per room. That gives us around 22.5 guests over the course of the week. Next, we examined a maximum turnover model, where all guests stayed for just one night before the room turned over to the next. That model gives us a total of 157.5 guests across the week, but it's an extreme unlikely case for a budget guest house and doesn't reflect the context of festival-driven short stays. So we created a third model, a realistic, festival-adjusted average. That week, 2 music festivals were taking place nearby, each running for 3 nights. Based on patterns for events like these, an average stay of 2.4 nights is reasonable. Using that figure, the turnover works out to around 2.91 rotations per room during the week, which results in an estimated 66 unique guests. This middle ground number, approximately 66 guests for the week, forms the basis for the next layers of analysis. Narrowing down to British women. Once we establish the number of guests, we filtered down by language and gender. Booking.com review data shows that only about 25% of reviews for Pensión Playa are written in English. Applying that proportion, we estimate that around 16 to 17 of the 66 weekly guests would have been English-speaking. Next comes gender. Assuming a typical 50-50 split, we estimate that 8 or 9 of those guests were likely to be British women. Now comes the name analysis. In the UK, the name Lucy appears in about 1 in every 100 British women. Based on this, the statistical expectation of finding a Lucy among those 8 or 9 British women is just 0.08, in other words, less than 1. This means a Lucy would only be expected to appear once every 12 to 13 weeks. That's the statistical baseline. So for a Lucy to appear in that week and to leave a review is already noteworthy before factoring in anything else. Name frequency across scenarios. To reinforce that rarity, we compared name frequency against each of the 3 guest volume models. In the long-stay scenario with just 22.5 guests across the week, the likelihood of a Lucy showing up drops even further, to just once every 35 weeks. In the realistic, festival-adjusted scenario of 66 guests, a Lucy appears once every 12 to 13 weeks, as previously mentioned. Even under the maximum occupancy model, which assumes 157.5 guests over the week, a Lucy would only appear once every 5 weeks. That still makes it highly improbable that a Lucy would show up at Pensión Playa during that specific week, let alone on the exact day of June 16th. And yet, a review was left, that week, that day, under the name Lucy. Citywide estimate. Now, zooming out to the wider Los Cristianos area, we examined whether the presence of other Lucys in town could explain the review. It's estimated that there were around 20,000 tourists in Los Cristianos during that week. Approximately half of those, about 10,000, would have been British. Half of those, again, 5,000, were likely women. Using the same 1 in 100 name ratio, that means around 50 Lucys would have been present across the entire week. Spread evenly, That gives us around 7 Lucys in town on any given day. While that sounds like a lot, here's the key point. Only one Lucy is publicly known, named, and confirmed to have been in Los Cristianos on June 16th. That's Lucy Mae Law. So while 6 other Lucys may have also been there that day, there's only one Lucy we know for certain. And it's her. That alone dramatically shifts the probability in her direction. The room type next, we considered the type of room mentioned in the review. A single room with a shared bathroom. This is the kind of setup typical for solo travelers, backpackers, and budget-conscious visitors. It's not the type of accommodation that families or high-end holidaymakers typically book. It fits with the context of someone staying short-term, traveling light, or linked to festival attendance. Separately, there's been mention of Lucy Mae Law having a roommate who was working seasonally, possibly in one of the bars around the area. Seasonal bar workers are known to use flexible, low-cost housing options, and guest houses like Pensión Playa are often ideal for that type of arrangement. So if Lucy was staying for the festival, or even just crashing for a night in a room like that, everything about it makes logistical sense. There is no inconsistency in behavior or accommodation profile. It lines up with what's known. Age factor. Some have asked, what if the reviewer wasn't 18? The truth is the review itself doesn't list the guest's age, but that absence doesn't harm the logic. What's more important is what isn't said. There's nothing in the review to indicate that the reviewer was older, traveling with children, on a family holiday, or staying for business. In fact, everything about the tone and choice of room suggests a young budget traveler, someone staying briefly, on the move, using low-cost options. Given that the only Lucy known to be in town that day was 18 years old, and nothing in the review contradicts that profile, the assumption stands. There is no conflicting data to undermine the link. Final probability. When all the pieces are assembled, the guest numbers, the language filtering, the name frequency, the known travel pattern, the timing, the room style, the lack of contradictions, and the citywide pool of Lucys, it all converges. This is not about making a hunch. This is about stacking variables. The result is a conclusion that's supported across multiple independent data points. The Lucy who left that review was almost certainly the same Lucy connected to the Slater case. Based on all variables analyzed, the probability that it was a different Lucy sits somewhere between 5 and 15%, which means the probability that the reviewer was Lucy Mae Law is conservatively estimated between 85 and 95%. Conclusion. This isn't guesswork. This is logic. This is convergence. Name, date, location, style, behavior, pattern, context, all aligned. Nothing about this match is circumstantial because every layer reinforces the one before it. So when the question is asked, was Lucy at Pensión Playa? The numbers don't whisper. They point. And they point directly at her. Follow-up. The blanket in the Snapchat photo. Now that the booking analysis is complete, we can return to the question raised at the start. The blanket seen in the Snapchat photo. In that image, a hand is shown holding a cigarette, and a blanket is wrapped around the lower torso and legs of a person. The face is not visible, and the person cannot be identified. But that blanket has become a focus of speculation. Some have pointed out that it appears similar to one used in photos of Pensión Playa, specifically in the loft apartment, a premium private room within the guest house. That blanket has a reddish-orange base and a distinctive black and white speckled pattern. Lucy, however, left a review for a single room with shared bathroom, a more affordable, minimalist setup. The blanket shown in loft apartment images does not appear in any photos of the single rooms. To explore the comparison further, an AI-assisted visual analysis was carried out. The comparison noted that the color palette is broadly similar, reddish-orange tones with warmth and fuzziness. The pattern, however, is not. The Snapchat image is blurry, overlaid with text, and lacks the distinctive speckled structure seen on the loft blanket. Even with an updated wider crop of the image, the AI similarity score came back at just 5.52%, a low result due to heavy image distortion, lack of pattern contrast, absence of the white speckling that defines the loft blanket. Could it be the same blanket? Technically, it's not ruled out, but visually and contextually, it's unlikely. More importantly, the loft room doesn't match Lucy's profile, either in budget, booking description, or purpose. Unless new evidence shows the loft blanket being used in single rooms, the blanket theory doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Whilst we can't say for certain that the blanket is from Pensión Playa, we can say with a high degree of probability that Lucy did stay there. Thanks for watching, and as always, we look forward to reading your thoughts and opinions in the comments below.